Action Comics number 10, written by Grant Morrison, art by Rags Morales. This is pretty much a new arc. If you remember last time, we left off with a little cliffhanger of the little diminutive man who's been showing up constantly, hiring a man named Nimrod in order to kill Superman because Nimrod's a mighty hunter. This is basically a one and done, just dealing with Nimrod. So we open up in Smallville with Nimrod's narration, basically introducing himself, what he does, what he did, and how everything, no matter what, leaves some sort of a track, and you just got to be smart enough to follow the track. So he goes into Smallville, the Kent farm specifically, and he's like talking to the current owner named Mr. Fry, and he's like, so whatever happened to Clark? I mean, where'd he go? And Mr. Fry's like, here he got a job down in the paper in Metropolis. That's all I know. And then we see Nimrod just Googling Clark Kent, and it just comes up with a Wikipedia page for Clark Kent. Not very long, mind you, but still, it's there, which is weird enough. And then we just see how he killed a dinosaur. Just a single page of that. Anyway, into the main part of this story. I don't know when this part takes place. I feel like this may be an early, still in the early days of Superman, but it is just after the Justice League is made, and you'll see why. So we see a story that Clark wrote about some girl whose body was identified. She was only 12 years old, and Clark is on the phone with, I think, his editor or something like that, basically saying okay, or no, sorry, he was on the phone with that farmer because someone was calling for Clark, and we see that Clark is really angry for some reason. So he runs down the stairs, gets a Superman t-shirt from the dryer, I guess, and walks to the train station. And then we cut to this man who's feeding his pet hamsters. And he hears a knock on the door. He goes over, opens it up, and Clark's standing there, and he's like, hey, hello, sir. I know that you killed that girl. I am a reporter, and I would like to talk to you. And he's like, no, I'm going to close the door now. If you've got a problem with that, call the police. Click. And he's like, oh, I already did. So then he goes back over to his hamsters again, and then the door busts down, and there's Superman in a red t-shirt this time, and he grabs the dude by the face. He's like, I could burn your eyes out of your skull, but I ain't gonna do that. I'm gonna leave you for the police. And the guy's like, but who's gonna take care of my hamsters? So then Clark meets up with the Justice League, and they don't have a place to go quite yet. They're just meeting up in an old abandoned warehouse. And Clark brings along the hamsters, and he's like, hey, does anybody want to take care of these hamsters? To which no one does. But then he also brings up, apparently they're in mid-conversation of, why are we not doing things? We are the Justice League. Why aren't we, going to the starving Saharan African countries and, giving them food and water? Why aren't we just why are we waiting for the big events instead of just helping people constantly? And everyone's just look, we can't just involve ourselves with the politics and stuff like that. We'll do the heroic things because that's what we're there for, but we can't make these decisions for people. And throughout this entire conversation, Clark just drops the fact that he knows everyone here's identities, including Batman. And Batman's like, yeah, well, I know you're a reporter too, so suck on that. And then Green Lantern gives Batman's... He doesn't straight up say Bruce Wayne. He says billionaire playboy, to which Green Lantern's like, so you're a billionaire, huh? And Bruce Wayne's like, shut up. You're not getting a dime. But anyway, Clark is kind of disillusioned with the Justice League at that point, because he's like, okay, I guess, whatever. Just call me when a space monster shows up. And he leaves. And then Batman's like, one of these days we're going to have to go after him. You guys know that, right? So then we cut over back to Metropolis. Clark is hanging out with Jimmy and Lois. And they're just looking through some of old scrapbooks and stuff like that. They're saying wow, Clark, you managed to get a date with a pretty hot redhead for prom. Whatever happened to that? And he's like, yeah, just grew apart or whatever. Lois, why do you have stuff in here that's before Superman's first appearance? You have things in here from apparently the Blake Farm ghost stuff, which I don't know whether or not is actually Superman's. It was actually Clark before he came out, but regardless, Lois put it in there as if it were Superman stuff. But anyway, they get out of the apartment. Clark thinks he sees someone staring at him for a second. Of course, it's Nimrod, but then he gets distracted by Lois. And then we just go to something completely different, which I guess is setting up the next arc, of this truck going down the road in the rain. A dude standing in a cloak is standing in the middle of the road. He stops the truck with like some hypnotic powers, hops in the passenger seat, and he's like, I've come home to this planet of my birth to assume control. Bring me to its leader. And the guy's like, I can take you to the mayor. And then they just drive off towards Metropolis. Doesn't come back. Future setup. Just keep that in the back of your mind. So then we cut to Jimmy, Lois, and Clark, who are all arriving at the Daily Star. And a guy's walking up there to the Daily Star, and everyone around is just freaking out. And they're like, what's going on here? And Lois is wondering where Superman is to deal with this. And Clark's like, oh, we don't need Superman. I know this guy. I literally walked up there. And he walks up. And apparently this guy's name is Angus Grundig, who I guess they did stories about in the Daily Star, and they literally ruined his life. And so he's like, all right, you guys want news out of me? I'll give you news. And he opens up his shirt, and there's dynamite on it. He presses the button, and boom, explosion at the base of the Daily Star with Clark standing right next to them. So then we cut to some indeterminate time later, and Nimrod comes up and talks to Clark's landlord. And he's like, hey, I'm an old friend of Clark's, and I just swung into town. I really wanted to talk to him. Do you know where I can find him? And she's like, oh, Clark died. Yeah, no, there was an explosion. He made some enemies at the Daily Star, and yeah, he's dead. And Nimrod's like, that's impossible. He's Superman. He's not dead. How can he be dead? What? So he's just kind of like relishing over the fact of like, did someone kill him before I killed him? And he mutters out loud that Superman must be dead, to which point the landlady's like, oh, well, Superman's not dead. You can just ask Superman. And Superman's literally standing in the doorway about to grab the gun out of Nimrod's hand. And Nimrod's like, look, I don't care who you are, but if you're here, I can kill you. And he takes a shot at Superman. And Superman just heat visions the gun out of his hand while making snarky comments the whole time. And just basically takes out Nimrod, no problem. And so then the landlady's like, but what about Clark? Where's Clark? And he's like, I'm sorry, Clark Kent is dead. Which the landlady definitely knows a secret. That was established, so I don't know what he's doing here. But regardless, Superman says he'll explain everything later. And then we get one last shot in the epilogue of Nimrod. I assume Nimrod, he's actually just hooked up in this big iron mask thing, is being approached by that diminutive man again, saying like, ooh, I can give you an army against Superman, but you just have to make a deal with me. Mwahaha. That's where we leave off. Pretty much just a one-shot story, just really quickly done. Not bad in any particular sense, but it's not great either. It's just kind of like, okay, the story needed to get to a point where Clark Kent was dead, and we just decided to do this dude hunting Superman at the same time. Which, fine, I guess. Not great, not bad, just fine. Art's fantastic. And I do like the 2-page segment with the dude in the cloak, whatever the hell that was. Apparently his name was Adam. Just saying. That looked really good. Yeah, but no, it's just kind of a one and done just to get us to where we need to be for what I assume will be the next story. So overall, I give this a 7. Still good, still dense as hell because, it's Grant Morrison, but it's telling a story and I'm liking where it goes. And I like how Superman went up to the Justice League and was just like, hey, let's do more. And they're like, that's not really how we work. And he's like, all right, bye. That just speaks volumes to who this Superman is. So I'm definitely enjoying it. And 7 for this particular issue.